Hi, folks. I hope everybody had a nice Christmas. And guess what's coming up? New Year's. So let's set the frame of reference. Basically, there's some things happen that are pretty significant. And I think that those that haven't been following are likely to be fearful. So I'm doing this because I want to basically let everybody know God's in control. It's going to look bumpy. There's going to be some ups and downs, but everything's under control. I'm going to do these every once in a while. We're going to call them Larry's rants. Now, uh, it's not like you think when you hear the word rants, oh, I'm mad. No, it's not that. It's that I'm doing this with no slides off the top of my head. All I have is just a couple of bullet points that I wrote down before we started this. So basically with that, I'm just going to start talking and we'll see where this goes. I don't know if it's going to be 10 minutes or 30 minutes or how long or how detailed. It's just whatever God wants to tell you. So with that, we're going to start and we're going to run through this, hopefully in some kind of a logical fashion. So buckle up your seatbelts, go get your coffee. You might want to get a piece of paper because the kind of stuff we are talking about is fairly significant, but just take a deep breath, sit back, relax, and here we go. We're going to start with the good news. And there is good news always in something that happens. I don't care how bleak it looks, there's good news. So I'm going to start with the good news and I'm going to try to finish with the good news. So for the good news, I'm going to basically tell you wealth transfer has happened. Those of you that put seed in the ground are already wealthy. You're just waiting for the right moment to cash out. So I'm going to go back to Kim Clement. I followed him for 15 years. And I believe he's the most accurate prophet in modern times. And he had some things to say that will go all the way back to 2014 on June 14, 2014. Hold on a second. I do have those two. I'm going to pull them up actually so I can give you his exact words. I was gonna ad lib them, but I can pull them up on my computer over here. So here's what he said. Look to the fall. That which comes down is that which could be shaken. So you think things are shaken, folks? So here's what he said. It was June 14th, 2014. He says, the rendering is coming in where the fall. Many will fall and many will rise from the dust. But remember, when these tremors and when these tumultuous moments happen, here's the good news. I will make it so the fall can do the work for America. So America is God's covenant nation, and there's evil afoot in what is being done with this silver squeeze. But we're going to talk about what God's intent is for it, and it's anything but evil. So then he had another prophecy, same day, or maybe it's a continuation, I should say, of the same prophecy. He said, winter says, I will make them happy. I have chosen each season to manifest something. My will shall be done. So for those who were awake, for those who had been following and believing in God, they knew on Christmas when this squeeze started to unfold that silver was going to go up and it was going to be what? That stone that Kim Clement prophesied that was going to be thrown, that was going to bring the banking system down, the monetary system down, and usher in the transition of wealth from the wicked to the righteous and bring in God's kingdom and destroy the enemy's kingdom. So that's the good news, folks. We're winning. We haven't won completely, but we're winning. And what is coming before us is going to be greater than anything you can possibly imagine. So take a deep breath, kind of take a moment of reflection, because now we're going to get into some of the scary stuff. So here we go. Basically, things don't just happen by accident. So those who follow me know that I kind of stick my nose in history because God told me that there's never anything he does unless there's a foreshadow. So let's take a trip back. And we're going to go all the way back in our Wayback Machine to 1934. And we're going to see that what's happening today happened before, almost in the same way. But the difference was it was America doing it to China. And now it's China doing it to America. So it's kind of like what goes around comes around. So it's the depth of the 1929 Great Depression. It's the year is 1934. And FDR is president. And he says, We need to fix this depression. And to do that, what we need to do is we need to give confidence to the dollar. So what we're going to do is we're going to put more silver in our treasury. And that's going to give the people confidence. So he sent his agents out and he said, I want you to buy silver all over the world. I don't care what it costs. Pay 2 times, pay 3 times more than spot, but get it and bring it back. And that's what they did. But it had catastrophic consequences for China, because China at the time was the only nation that was on an economy based on silver. And so basically the Chinese government panicked. The GDP dropped, unemployment went through the roof, the government destabilized, and ultimately it had that collapse had a lot to do with basically the collapse of the government that eventually led to the regime that's in power right now. So you might say China had a grudge against us. So what has happened now? We go full circle all the way back, and we find that they're doing to us what we did to them. And by the way, I'm not an expert in silver. I'm not an expert in gold. I'm not a financial analyst. I get things from history. So those of you who followed me know the routine. I go back. God sends me to the point in history where whatever we're talking about started. He brings me forward to see the tipping points that came along the way so we can get to where we're at. And then I'm able to take all that data, pull it together, and look at it and say, I see the pieces, I see the pattern, and I can put the pieces together. I can make predictions, and all they are predictions. I'm not telling you that anything is going to happen precisely the way I say, but I'm saying that I'm making informed predictions based off history and based upon all the data elements that are available to me. So with that, what happened after this was orchestrated, what basically happened and how bad is it? So was there an objective? Yes, the objective was to do to us what we did to them, but now look at it in terms of modern times. What did they want to do right now? So this takes us into understanding the shifting geopolitical environment that's going on right now. Basically, there's a squeeze on, and this is God's plan. So it's a little bumpy, but God's in control. What has to happen is we have to have a world where no one nation, no one group of people can control another. That's not the kingdom that God wants. God wants us to all be each other's brothers. He wants us to lock arms and end all the division, end all the fighting, end all the war, and basically live in harmony. And then he wants us to step out and cure our economic woes. And then he wants us to do what? Be the steward of our brothers and be the stewards of the nations of the world and of the ecology of the world. So that's the role that God is preparing for us that we can move into. So you see, I don't care how bleak it looks, the outcome, if you can see through it to the other end, there's this beautiful rainbow waiting. It's just exquisite what's going to be coming down. So what is going on right now, and why does it look scary? Because this collapse was orchestrated over decades. So let's go back a little more history. We go back this time to the election of Jimmy Carter. And Jimmy Carter was given an assignment. Basically, the global financial elite puppet every nation. They're puppeting China, just like they're puppeting us and Russia and so forth. And they had an assignment for Jimmy Carter. We want you to bring down America. And how we want you to do it is we want you to impact their economic system. We want you to gut their manufacturing and ship that money and that manufacturing to China, because here's what they wanted. So this is where this plan that just happened was hatched all the way back then. So what basically happened, I'm walking you through, we're doing the American piece now, then we'll do the Chinese piece. And so what happened that created this situation is Carter saw to it that money flowed, investment flowed to China. All of the brokers said, you want to make money? Go to the high growth market, which is China. Well, what did they want to do? Here's what they wanted. They said that America is getting too powerful. We want to have the innovation of capitalism, the innovation of America, but we want the control of communism. So the goal was to create a super capitalist communist society where basically there was all kinds of innovation, but there was also absolute control by the government. And that's going to come full circle when we see what they're trying to do today with the economic system that America is offering versus the economic system that China is offering. Let me look at my notes for just a second. All right, let's define what the two systems are. So basically what's going on, you know what, I should do something else. I should go back to today for a second, and I should tell you what the outcome of this is, because let's just get the scary part over with. So basically we've got a shortfall, a very significant shortfall that was orchestrated and created. If we look at the COMEX vaults, the demand is 725 million ounces for this first quarter, but they only have 38.2 ounces in the vaults. So that means there's a 699.8 million ounce shortage. That's gigantic. What's it going to do? It's going to lead to a situation where banks are going to fall. It's going to lead to a situation where confidence in the COMEX is going to be destroyed, where the bond between paper and physical metal present for delivery is destroyed. It's going to lead to China trying to play a couple of trump cards to get back. So basically everything is going to happen. We're going to see in the coming weeks, we're going to see announcements that some very, very big banks are going to fail. That's where people are going to get scared. But don't worry, God's got this all worked out. And in the end, as this unravels, here's what's going to happen. For those of you who got silver, 2 weeks ago, the prognosticators, the podcasters were telling you, silver's done. It's gone as high as it's going to go. It's reached an all-time new high. No, it had just begun. What happened is it was uncoupled. The chains were taken off. And the first sign that I saw that indicated that was what JP Morgan did. JP Morgan has been more active in holding silver down than any other entity in the world. They've done it for decades. They use paper to do it. They basically would leverage silver purchases 90 to 1 and basically be able to hold the market down and suppress it in that fashion. Well, they got rid of all of their paper contracts, every one of them. And in the midst of the highest silver prices we had seen, we had just gone above into the 60s. They bought 22 billion with the dollars ounces of gold. And wow, it gave them one of the biggest inventories of silver in the world. I said gold, I meant silver. And so what's that tell me? They've got all the data that you can't even dream of. And yet they said, this is a good play. So they knew right then that this was coming, that this was being orchestrated, and they knew that silver was going to have a run the likes of which we've never seen. So here's what's going to happen. I don't know what number to tell you this is going to stop at, but I know the pattern, and that's what I'm going to give you right now. The COMEX is going to default. It's going to have force majeure. And when that happens, the people who are experts in that marketplace are frantically trying to calculate numbers and come up with an estimate of what's going to happen. But they think, based on their estimates, on prognostications, that payout is going to be at around $68 an ounce. They're not going to deliver physical gold. They're going to basically force payment, and that breaks the bond between silver and paper. And when that happens, all those contracts, however many are left in the name, when it falls, whatever the shortfall is, it's going to be paid out at $168 an ounce. That's going to be billions and billions and billions of dollars, folks. Enough money to collapse banks, enough money to create pandemonium. But here's what's going to happen. Regardless of that, the paper market and silver market are decoupled. At that point, it's a tangible market. Governments need silver for national security projects. Industry needs silver to keep their doors open. So depending on how strategically significant silver is to any one industry, they're going to keep buying until the point comes where it's so expensive that they literally can't keep their doors open. They can't afford to buy it. So silver is likely to go in the short run here, $150, $250, depending on the pain threshold of the individual entity. And then can it go higher? Yes, as things adjust in the economy, then it can still go higher. So I don't know where this is going. I just know that it's going to put massive pain and massive pressure, and it's going to result in something that God knows has to happen. So in this trauma, just know that everything that can be shaken will be shaken. And so that means the banks are going to fall, because what does God say? Is the story that we hear every day is he who controls money controls the world. And we talked about the spheres of influence. And so let's run back and look at history again. So when basically the banks fail, here's what happens. Basically, the money dries up. The credit is gone. There's nothing to run the system anymore. And panic hits and markets crash and stocks fall and everything happens. And this collapse is going to be different than any that we've ever had. Looking back at history, I'm just ranting, folks. I'm just rambling and trying to take everything I can and give it to you kind of all at one time so that you can get the big picture like I have it and you can understand. So basically what happens, chaos ensues, absolute chaos. Because in the past, what always happened, when the banks fall, it can basically cause, as God says, in a day, kingdoms can fall. So the Dutch were the reserve currency at one time, then it was the Spanish, then it was the British, and now it's us. And we can see some patterns. Those nations that were the reserve currency at the time of the collapse fell harder and faster than any other nation because they had been allowed to inflate their currency more. They ran their printing presses. And always before, there was one nation, one key rival that just said, we're swapping positions. You're out, we're in, that's it, it's over. And basically the event usually revolved around one thing. The currency was debased to where it wasn't worth anything. If it was in modern times, the stock market fell or the bond market fell. But what we're going to be walking into here is something that we've never seen. It's called an everything collapse. The bond market's going to collapse. The real estate market's going to collapse. The stock market's going to collapse. But don't fear. God's got a plan for rapid restoration. Those things have to happen because we have to get control of the global economic system. We have to free the slaves. So just like there were plagues that fell on England, that fell on Egypt to set us free, we have to have certain disruptions that happen here. And it's going to be scary, but it's going to be for the good. So we have to get back control and to get honest elections. We won't get those unless we expose that it's been stolen, and then that allows Trump to do what? To drain the swamp. We're going to find out that the events in Venezuela have led to 72 nations having their elections stolen. When that's disclosed, and it's coming, folks, that's one of the things that's going to be shaken. We're going to be able to remove who knows how many elected officials in every level of government, local, state, and federal, that are in there, and we're not legitimately elected. We're going to be able to get rid of judges, and that means we're going to be able to have a special election and elect people. So those of you who are listening, you might be thinking about whether you might be a candidate for an office coming up. But basically, we're going to drain the swamp. And then when the banks fail, they're gone. Or when the corporations fall, when the stock market falls, everything comes down so that God can just sweep it out the door and start with his economic system. So let's look at what in the big picture, all of that comes down to. God's told us over and over again, the kingdoms of man must fall. So what's that mean? It means communism is going to fall because it's absolutely oppressive and because it stifles creativity. And capitalism is going to fall too. Why? Because it breeds greed and it puts men in power that basically will do anything for money or for power or for prestige. And those are our overlords. Those are the people that are going to be taken out now. And so what happens after that? Capitalism's gone. Communism is gone. That's the only thing we know. So there's a new system. There's a system that God has wanted all along. And the 68, my throat's a little dry. I'm going to take a cup of coffee here. In 68, when I died, God showed me what it was going to be. He says, I'm going to bring you out of the cleft of the rock right as the collapse is happening. And you're going to tell the people the truth, and it's going to open their eyes, and they're going to understand that everything's going to be okay. So here's what he showed me. The kingdoms of man had to fall, but the new system couldn't be implemented until we had certain technological innovations. I didn't know what those were until recently, but it comes down to the fact that we're not going to have fiat currency. We're going to have God's economic system, and that's based on his kingdom resources that are plentiful. It's going to be based on oil, on gold, on silver, on copper, on platinum, on barley, on wheat, on on anything that's tangible, that has a purpose, that can't be manipulated because it has value. And so basically that's going to be the new economic system of the world. And that's going to have to change the governmental systems of the world. So what do I mean by that? You're going to find this hard to believe, but a little event happened around 2019, 2020, and it was a worldwide extinction event. It starts with a C, and you finish it out. I think you know what it was, and it had to do with something like that. So that happened, and millions and millions of people died. And we need to understand that that too was orchestrated. That was orchestrated, and it has to do with silver. Isn't that funny? It has to do with the kingdoms of man falling and the kingdom of God rising. I mean, so here's what's going on. Basically, they decided, they being the global financial elite, the pharaohs of old, that we were what they called worthless eaters. And we had to die. We had to die by the millions, by the billions. And so they gave us some warnings. They put out something called the Georgia Guidestones that said, hey, our magic number for you worthless eaters, so we're going to reduce you to 500,000 people. And the UN was a little more generous. They said, well, we can live with around 1 billion. So basically, they put this plague out there on us and killed as many as they could. They've killed us with wars. They've had all kinds of innovative ways to get rid of us. But now it's getting serious because guess what? There are some minerals that are absolutely quintessential, some things that are that can't, there are no substitutes for. So basically, when silver got to a point where we were literally running out of it, we had 5 consecutive years where there was not enough silver mined to meet production, and we had to take silver from existing mine supplies, a lot of stock, if you will, and that stock is running terribly low. So they decided it's time for another one of those catastrophic events like what happened in 2019. And that's why we are here and why we're having this silver crisis happen, because it's orchestrated, because they want to bring the system down, but their goal is to put in their system. So with that, I think I'm going to transition into how this silver is only going to collapse banks, but it's going to give the world 2 different economic systems. And at the end, I'll come back and I'll go to God's system. So let's go through man's system that they want to implement. So let's go to China first, and let's see what China is doing. Remember now, the overall objective is to kill us, and the objective is to keep control from the global financial elite by any means possible. And so let's see how they're going to orchestrate that. Basically, what they're doing is they're saying the systems of man must fall. That means we have to deglobalize. So that's what America is doing to try to take trade away from China and distribute it to nations around the world to create equality, to create parity, because a gross difference between the standard of living for nations is what basically orchestrates wars. So what Donald Trump is doing, I believe at the direction of God, is trying to create economic parity around the world. But what the Chinese want is something very, very different. So here's the system that they're doing. Well, first, let's go back and what does the other side of the equation want to do? So they want to de-dollarize us because they know that will collapse us and give them the ability to emerge as the winners in this war to see what economic system is going to run the world. So here's what China is doing. China basically is saying we have created BRICS because we want to cause the America to collapse. So we're putting pressure on the economic system, and more nations are using alternatives to the U.S. petrodollar, and now they're coming out with what? The silver petrodollar. And so it turns out that they've been controlling silver, stockpiling for decades, stockpiling gold, stockpiling silver, getting ready. And then what happened to help prepare, they went with Carter. Now, who you said a second ago, he was basically seeing to it that China was growing, right, and taking trade and manufacturing away from us. But Carter and every president since then just set and allowed China to run rampant all over the world. And they went out and made mining contracts for rare earth, for gold, for silver, for every strategic mineral you can think of in Africa and South America and all over the world. And America sat back and did virtually nothing. So what we find is that China is in control currently of substantially more mineral assets than we are. And that's what's happening with silver. And then when they got ready to pull the trigger, here's what they did. If you look at the comics, that's the paper money. That's where we didn't have the silver in the vaults. And then you've got basically what they do. They have reserved accounts. What that means is there's a volume of silver in an account, in a vault, with somebody's name on it. And so the representative from China calls up vaults all over the world and says, we have 1 million here and 10 million there and whatever, we're claiming it. So put it on a truck, send it to the shipyard, and we're shipping it back to China. So in preparation for triggering this, they called in all the reserves that they had, all the silver they had in the vaults all over the world, effectively creating a situation where COMEX was going to be in dire trouble. So now what happens is they collapse the market, and they're sitting on hordes of silver. So what's the goal? What's the objective? The objective is to reverse the effectiveness of what Donald Trump has been doing. Well, how are they going to do that? Here's what's going to happen. They're going to create a situation where the demand grows for silver up and up and up and up. Like I said, maybe $250, and all of a sudden, people can't afford it. And industry in America starts to dry up, because if we can't provide the manufacturer of silver, their factories literally close. So what are they going to do? They're going to start putting pressure on heavy silver users, saying, come back home, come back to China. Let's put your factory back in China again, and we'll give you the silver that you need. So basically, they're trying to crush the American economy, and they're using silver to do it. And they're trying to stop the demanufacturing of China, and which is effectively what Donald Trump has been doing with tariffs, with all the things he's doing. And he's got commitments for $18 trillion. They're trying to cut that line and have people say, well, maybe we're not going to build that factory in America. Maybe we're going to build it in China. Don't get too upset, folks. It's not going to work. That's not what God is intending. So now let's go to what America's doing, and then I'll tell you why what China's doing is not going to work.